worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today.
Well, good morning. Good morning, Utah County. This is Hans Anderson here on K-Star with our call-in show again this morning. I hope you'll join us. I've got a special guest with us this morning, Tom Butler. Have you ever wanted to go to a city council meeting and you didn't go because there's somebody you wanted to ask something and you didn't know how to do it, or if you make a fool out of yourself? Well, I have a city councilman here this morning. You don't have to go to the meeting. He's here. He's here to answer your questions if you want to participate, if you want to ask what goes on at a city council meeting and would it do any good if I went. Anyway, Tom's a good man. I've met him, talked to him several times, and he's the kind of city councilman that if I had been elected to Orem City Council when I ran, I would want to be like Tom. He's got things figured out. Tom, good to have you here this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Hans. I appreciate that very much. Good to be here.
If you want to participate, let me give you a phone number here, 801-224-1414. 801-224-1414. Now, Tom cannot defend everything that has happened in Provo City or Orem City or even Highland City or American Fork or Payson or Spanish Fork. I've had talked to people, cities all over the place here. But he could help you get an understanding of some of the things that are going on out there and some of the stuff he deals with, why he ran, and what he's tried to accomplish, some of the grief he's run into. Tom, when I was talking to him the other day, said his city has about 15,000 citizens in it.
Yes, that's right.
How did you get elected? What did you do? 15,000 people. I couldn't do it.
Well, that's a great question, Hans. I'll be honest with you. I had never had any ambition for political office. Never had any desire for that. I'm kind of a private person. Kind of like to stay to myself and keep my affairs to myself. But in January of 2009, there was a newsletter from the city that came out and signed by the mayor. In fact, it was the mayor's corner, if you will. And he stated that due to the fact that we were in the middle of a recession and that prices were down, this was the time to spend. And Highland had already gone from $5 million in bonded debt to nearly $18 million of bonded debt over the previous 4-year period. And that caused me some concern. I mean, I wasn't actively involved in local politics. I did consider myself somewhat astute on national and world affairs due to the fact that I studied it and had a very significant interest in that. But local stuff, is penny ante, under the water. Someone else would deal with it. It wasn't anything significant. There would be no corruption at the local level, of course, and all of those kind of false assumptions that I assumed that I had to be involved where I could at a higher, more significant issues were found at the state level, at the national level. Organizing campaigns to write your congressman and being involved with several organizations and Campaign for Liberty and Ron Paul and things like that.
Yeah, the good people.
Yes. And so then I saw that and I said, oh my gosh, and something went off my head. A quote from one of my heroes, Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Mm-hmm. He said, look, the things at Washington, D.C., for all intents and purposes, are it's almost too late. But where we have to take our country back and restore the republic and restore the Constitution is at the local level. We have to take back our cities, our towns, our counties, our school boards. And the only way to do that is for good people to get involved and to paraphrase what someone else said that we all know and love, lift where you stand. And so I just started thinking about those things and and then I just decided, after consideration and a lot of pondering and prayer and different things, I said, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. I don't have a chance. I don't think I have a chance to win. I'm too extreme, as some people might say, too intense. But there were certain principles that I believed were important, and I was going to run on those, and if nothing else, at least interject those issues into the debate, into the dialogue. I'd never
use that platform of running for office to educate and make popular that which is good.
Absolutely, and so I had no expectation of winning, frankly. And so in July, I believe it was the 1st of July, was the deadline. By then, I believe you had to have 100 signatures, and that wasn't too hard, for people just to sign your silly, your little petition to get on the ballot. But beyond that, I didn't really, when you hadn't run before, you didn't know what to expect, but you didn't expect a lot. And so as it just evolved and morphed, we just worked hard and fought the fight and knocked the doors, and surprisingly, amazingly enough, the message resonated with at least 56% of the electorate there, which is, it's not a what do you call a landslide victory, but on the other hand, it wasn't 51% either, so it was a significant majority. Yeah. And I ran with an association. We were forced in association to run sort of as a collective. Scott Smith and Lynn Ritchie. Scott was running for city council as well, a very conservative Republican, and Lynn Ritchie was running for mayor. We had no intention of uniting our forces initially, but the opposition, the establishment, the establishment guys, the incumbent mayor, a couple of his anointed, if you will, on the planning commission, ended up all of a sudden we saw their signs having all three names on the same signs, all three names on the same literature, and we said, we can either stay on our own or we can copy what the enemy is doing, if you will, the opposition, and in a nutshell, it paid off. So we've made some significant strides in Highland City.
So it was supposed to be a nonpartisan race, every man for himself type of a thing. You don't identify with a certain group, but it became clear. And political races are like that. I mean, you find out who the familiar spirits are, and and I'd say that they're good familiar spirits, and there's those other familiar spirits,
Right.
But, well, that's interesting. So, yeah, if they watch politics, this grouping of signs happens.
Oh, yes.
I watched it. It was extremely obvious in the last Provo race. It's certain mayor candidates, city council candidates. Same thing happens out here in Orem. Well, 56%. Now, how many votes does that come down to out of the 15,000 citizens out there, which would be all ages?
If I recall from the records, this is going back a year and a half or more than, actually about a year and a half now. I believe that there was about 3,800 registered voters, but don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but that's approximate. Might I add that I think a good measure of our success was the anti-incumbent tsunami that was raging across the country at the same time, that had started even before the last national election, where the Tea Party guys, kind of rode in. We were at the beginning of that, if you will, where people were just fed up with the status quo. They were fed up with the direction things were going, and they wanted a change. And sadly enough, other people rode on those same waves, as we know, hope and change, to our detriment. But we participated in that same.
Throw the rascals out. They're
Yes.
leading us in the wrong direction, and
Right. And I'd like to think that some of the rascals were thrown out, and hopefully in Highland, at least I believe, we're going in the right direction. Not everybody would agree with that, of course, but we can talk about those points as we go on.
3,800 registered voters. Now, man, I didn't bring my papers on registered voters percentage-wise. The last thing that I was talking about when I was looking, well, that's okay. I won't run the numbers here. Last time I was looking up some city election results in Orem was when I was talking about we have an art council tax that was passed. in what was it, 2005, I believe. 5,016 voters wanted that. And that's a good idea, I guess, if you want everybody else to help pay for your tickets to the Sierra Theater, the Hale Center Theater. But 5,016 citizens in Orem voted for it. 3,800 voted against. I was one of the 3,800 that lost. And that raises between $1.6 and $1.8 million a year, depending on, sales tax collections. And then they're supposed to give this money to Hale Center Theater. And I actually figured it out one day because I like to go to the Hale Center Theater. And anyway, the subsidy that my fellow Orem citizens give me each time I go and take my wife and kids is $3.46 per ticket. But you win and you lose some. But you won. You won.
Hooray.
Hooray.
Well, if I could give you a local example of what we're going through that's similar to your Hale Center Theater example. Highland, of course, is a small town compared to the big city Orem, right? And we can agree on that. But
we have 6 for every one of you.
There you go.
Over here in Orem.
In a nutshell, for the last decade or so, I don't know exactly how long, Highland City residents have been involved with American Fork recreation programs.
Yeah, you're right close there.
Yes, we border on American Fork. And they have a nice rec center, and they have a nice sports program for the children, soccer and Little League baseball and all those kind of things. And my kids have participated in it, actually, when they were younger. And because Highland was paying a subsidy, but we were paying American Fork about as I recall, $92,000 a year. That allowed the Highland residents to have the, in-state tuition, if you will, for lack of a better way, resident discounts. Last year, in our first year in office, in trying to trim the budget and reduce cut out the fat and cut out the pork. And in fact, by the way, the theme of my campaign actually kind of plagiarized from Ron Paul. The theme of mine was put Highland City government on a diet. That was the campaign theme of my campaign.
Well, this is one of those moments when I wish we were on TV because you've got some good-looking literature here that you ran with. Yeah, let's talk about that. I wanted to ask you, were you a sleuth candidate? Did they have no idea what you believed? Or does your campaign literature say, here is what I believe?
No, I believe in full transparency, and I laid it all out.
You laid it out.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. And so,
well, keep going then. Keep going. This is good.
Okay, let me just finish the American Fork thing real quick. Well, basically, the $92,000 divided by the roughly 15,000 residents, or that should say the 3,000 Highland youth that participate in the system worked out to be about $3,000 per person in the system. It worked out to be $31 per person in the system, based off the population, okay? Anyway, that was one of the issues, one of the things that we looked at and said, you know what, we just can't afford to do this anymore. And so we had to give a year notice. So last July, we during the budget process, we eliminated the $92,000 Highlands tax subsidy to American Fork. And so now Highland residents, effective July 1, will have to pay out-of-resident, non-resident fees. And let me just tell you what those are, because I'm getting all kinds of email from people saying, "Oh, what a mean-spirited person I am! How draconian! We need to cut." But
I want you to pay for my son's participation.
Absolutely, and as I recall, you stating when we met before that your father had said in his analysis when he was at BYU that 2/3 of all LDS people were socialists. Yes,
right.
Well, we got them in Highland too. I just got to
they're over there too.
Because I get these emails stating, "Hey, you are so mean. Why are you cutting this? Cut anywhere but this. This is this is for the children, don't you know?"
Yeah.
And so the annual fee for American Fork resident to use for family, unlimited number of people in the family, is $390 a year. Well, non-resident is $450 a year to use the facility, the swimming pool, the track, all the stuff that they have there, weights, racquetball. So we're talking about $60 a year. In my mind, the people that use the facility ought to pay that $60, and the ones that don't shouldn't be on the hook for the benefit of the others. In example, going along with your example of the Hale Center Theater,
yeah.
Why should the people who don't go to the theater subsidize your seat? I'm sorry, no offense, but
none taken. In fact, I've pointed out on the show before here somehow I just sit back in that chair and relax and soak it in when I go to that theater, because I do like that theater. It's fun.
Oh, I like it too. I've been there many times.
Yeah, it's fun, but why should the 5,016 force 94,000 people to pay for my ticket? And this is on point. What you're talking, the same thing.
And to make it worse, those people that are in Orem, I think they're also subsidizing my ticket.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't even live in Orem.
You don't even live in Orem.
And then, so to wrap this up, the baseball fee is $35 for an a resident in American Fork, and previously for Highland, and non-resident now will be $60. So the differential is $25. That sounds like a lot, and it is significantly as a percentage. But should not the people that participate, should not the users of the program pay to support the program, and not be and not fall into the socialist trap that sounds good, it's euphemistic? Well, it's for the common good, it's for the greater good. No, I see it as extorting money from those who don't want to pay, who don't want to participate and shouldn't have to participate, paying for those that are. And so I'm getting all kinds of, I'm not going to say hate email or death threats, nothing to that extreme, but there are some people that are really ramped up about it, and they're just now finding out about it because we did this nearly a year ago, 9 months ago, and it's just now coming out that, to them at least, even though it was in the paper and other places, that this action happened, and oh my goodness, I'm going to have to pay $25 more for Johnny or Susie to participate. And that's not a popular issue to stand on.
And they want their neighbor to pay for it.
Absolutely.
They don't want to pay for it.
Well, yes.
That's a government right.
Absolutely, right. It's a right, absolutely.
I have a right to go to that thing and have my neighbor pay for it. Yeah, I've studied this. I've been back to Boston. There's a Boston Commons area back there, which is kind of like a big park. You go into Philadelphia, they've got, some public areas. You go to Washington, there's big public areas. And you think, well, where does what the government ought to provide start and end? And where does what private enterprise ought to do start and end? Going back to my loss, when I ran, I said we ought to sell our rec center. And I got more. See, the city employees, they got a free pass to go to that. So suddenly, when I say, kind of like the hate mail you're getting or the emails, you dog. Suddenly, all the city employees suddenly realize, hey, Anderson's going to jerk my free pass. So I figured out how to gather opposition as I went, and I thought it was interesting. Then it went to the soccer people. I had people come up and say, well, you're going to make me pay for my own soccer thing? The city pays for that, and make me pay for my kids' softball or baseball games, and then it went up. Where I really kicked the bucket over, though, was people who wanted the golf course. This is years ago, and the city, was still subsidizing golf courses, but the people, these people that want a free ride at the taxpayer's expense, suddenly that's what got all these people activated. They wanted that free ride, and it wasn't who's going to provide the safest neighborhoods or the best police force, the best paid police force, the best equipment, the best cars. It's who's passing out the goodies.
Absolutely.
And I want my goodies, and I don't want to pay for them. I want my neighbor to pay for them.
Well, I come from a constitutionalist perspective with a libertarian slant, if you will.
Okay.
I think that government has its basic responsibility and that needs to fulfill basic services, water, sewer, trash, if you will, or a police service, and somebody even argued that those ought to be privatized. Mm-hmm. But some basic services at the local level. Beyond that, it's fluff. I mean, it's nice to have parks, it's nice to have rec centers, it's nice to have soccer and baseball and stuff, but where do you draw the line, especially in critical times where revenues are down, tax revenues are down, in spite of the fact that valuations and tax rates are up, and everything's going out of control with inflation. And well, here's the thing. When I ran, Highland City was nearly $18 million in bonded debt. That worked out to be, as I calculated, about $1,300 or so per resident, for every man, woman, and child in Highland.
Even the little babies involved in that, kind of like our federal stuff. Right,
and that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you look at the last Sunday's Deseret, that was 2 weeks ago Sunday, Deseret News article, it said that California is bankrupt, and they're bankrupt because every man, woman, and child in California is indebted to the state $2,300 and change. And I thought, 2,300, 1,300. There's not a big difference
Yeah, we're
there.
approaching that critical mass that says we're broke too.
Do we want to be like California? I don't think so. So in the last year and a half, actually, we've paid down. Now we're at a, if you want to call it a respectable, which I don't, but $15.9 million debt. But we're paying it down at
You're going the right direction.
We're going the right direction, and I stood on a principle that we will not have any new bonded debt, no matter what, until we get a handle on this debt, or unless the people in Highland pass it with a referendum of 2/3 majority, and then then I'll say consider that's what
they want. That's what they're going to get.
They want debt, but actually, how I originally got involved was with Scott Smith was running a petition to block Highland City, the previous administration, the previous council, from putting us an additional $5 million in bonded debt, which would have been almost $23 million, for the east-west corridor road. All right, that you might have heard about, that runs from 4800 West, which is the road that Lone Peak High School is on, over to Alpine Highway. Now, on the face of it, I'm not opposed to the road, but I'm opposed to going into debt to pay for it. Now, because of us pushing back on that little issue, if you will, and that was actually the first Highland issue I ever got involved with, getting people to sign a petition, because of our pushback, now the county has allocated $4 million to pay for that road. And we're just signing an interlocal agreement to that fact here almost as we speak. So,
and they'll have gas taxes coming in, which will help pay for that, I suppose, rather than Highland City getting put on the hook to bond for it.
Yeah, and everybody listening to my voice is probably saying, "Oh, those dirty dogs in Highland, they should have paid for their own road." But the reality is we couldn't afford it. I mean, the reality is we couldn't. And
we're not going to put a road in.
And the county wanted that road. So
yeah, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes over there, but when I hear stuff like that, it takes me back when Orem City's famous for having RDAs, like that new hamburger drive-in place with In-N-Out that went out of California.
Mm-hmm.
Orem City voted them a nice RDA, And you drive by there's a big, huge backup of cars at lunchtime, every day, and you think, what's going on? We're giving these people subsidies to come in here. Only a bunch of stupid people on the Orem City Council would be that stupid, An RDA, but if you go back and look, I had one guy years ago when I was running for office, and I was attacking this subsidy for business.
Mm-hmm.
Because quite often there's two groups of people that run for office. Those who want to steal for the wealthier people, and those who want to steal for the poorer people. And that's why they're there. They're not there to protect the police. They're not there because they're benevolent. We're going to cut taxes. You were. That's why you started. That's what brought you out of the chute. We're going to cut this tax and spend bunch back. But
yeah.
That's usually what gets people going is where's my free lunch here?
Well, that's an interesting point you make, Hans. That was what got me started. Was the catalyst was the upside down, the mammoth behemoth of debt that we were incurring and continuing to incur. And actually, the current, I calculated that if we went another 4 years on that same upward tick, that same increase, Highland would have gone from $18 million to $50 million in debt in another 4 years. And I said, I can't allow that. So that was that was the catalyst for me. Since then, of course, I've had my eyes open to see other issues that are of deep concern. But regarding my oath that was on my campaign literature, says my oath is to uphold and protect the individual rights of the citizens of Highland. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in the Bill of Rights. And I believe that government at all levels is out of control. I have absolutely no problem stating that. And it's not just the feds. It's not just the state. It's the county. It's the city. It's the school board. It's everywhere. It's a disease. It's a cancer that's eating us, and we're going to see the results of this.
People are asleep at the wheel driving off the cliff and don't see it yet.
Whether they're in leadership or whether they're just the citizens.
Yeah.
Both of them, absolutely.
I've got a big painting at the end of my hall I see every day when I walk down towards my bedroom or leave it. It's a picture of this big ship going over what looks like Niagara Falls, and some guy standing there with a telescope yelling, "I told you so."
Exactly.
I told you so.
Well, as I've stated in public meetings, we're on the Titanic. The Titanic's hit the iceberg. We're listing at about 17%. We're going down, and most people are just rearranging the deck chairs.
Yeah, which is what's going on in Washington D.C. right now. It's it's fun to watch. People can change, though. People can learn. I know I was reading some of Joseph Smith's history back there in Nauvoo. His city was about 12,000. The surrounding area is about 20,000. He was the mayor. And they passed all these laws and all these ordinances licensing everything under the sun. And then later he came back and said, you know, people need their freedom. They need their agency. And so he proposed repealing the licensing ordinances there in Nauvoo. And I thought that's interesting. You know, people learn. Nobody's perfect. One man was perfect.
Exactly. Only one. Well, that was one of the other platforms that I ran on, was the reducing city controls and regulations. We had Highland for a number of years has been known in the development circles as a very anti-development development. There were those who wanted to keep Highland rural and small, and I respect that. But the issue was that we had draconian ordinances in place that were more designed to, how do I say this, more designed to preserve property values than to preserve property rights. And one example of this would be the draconian sign ordinance that we had in place. You could not, at the time, put a sign in front of your yard, or a sign down at your neighbor's yard, down at the corner, saying Anderson family wedding with an arrow. Mm-hmm. It was illegal. You could not advertise a garage sale. People would park a car on the street. Hands, check this out. They would park a car on the street with balloons on it, advertising a garage sale, because that wasn't illegal. But to put a sign in the ground on the strip, even with the permission of the neighbor on that corner with an arrow, that was illegal.
Yeah, that's illegal.
And we had a sign Nazi who drove around and picked and just went around and picked up all the signs.
Turned people in, huh?
Oh yeah, it was.
Get them.
And I said, something's wrong with this picture. Something's wrong with it. To me, it's totally un-American. It's unconstitutional. It's against everything that our founding fathers stood for. Which way do we want to go? To a complete police state, which is that's the direction that we're headed as a country, as a state, even as a county and cities, as from my perspective. So we're trying to push back where we can. We've eliminated several ordinances that were there in that regard, and we're just trying to make Highland, and I say we. There's three of us that hold a loose coalition majority right now, and we're trying to make Highland a freer place. At least that's my objective.
Mm-hmm. Hey, if you want to participate here, give us a call, 801-224-1414. I have a real live city councilman here, our kind of people for the normal listeners that talk to me about this show. I need braver people out there. I talk to lots of people who talk to me one-on-one, but they just say they don't want to call in. But give us a call here, 224-1414, if you want to participate. This ruling and deciding what's a good law, what's a bad law. Years ago, I was up in Ezra Taft Benson's home, and we were talking about when he was in the government, Secretary of Agriculture, and the laws that he dealt with, that he had to deal with, as from an administrative standpoint. And he told me that he did not have a choice between a good law and a bad law. He had a choice between two bad laws. So for 8 years, he was trying to work with bad laws, to make the best out of a bad situation. And I know reading one of his books, my father wrote the foreword to it, he talked about you can't just turn the socialist plane, so to speak, that's 30,000 feet in the air, just shut off the engine. I mean, you can't do it anyway. We got too many socialists out there to do that. But he was saying you got to bring the thing down gradually. You've got to pull away gradually. And that's the goal, is to get people in there who will start going in the right direction, start cutting it back. But this idea of ruling, it's difficult. What else have you got? Hey, we have a caller. Hey, good morning.
Yeah, it's Tom Miller here in Orem.
Hey, good talk with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate everything that you have to say, and I've been following your program for some time.
Hey, great.
The question that I have is that money that you saved Highland by dropping off the fluff there, what did you do with that money to enhance maybe reducing the debt or improving the environment for Highland? And how are you going to use the monies that you save in the future for the same thing that would reduce the debt and enhance the freedom and that type of thing for the people?
Where'd the money go, Tom, that you saved?
Great question. Well, let me first of all state that in the budget process, which actually is a several-month-long public process, it's done in front of in city council meetings and work sessions that are all advertised, and for the most part, my objective, one of the other platforms I ran on, was not to increase taxes. No more tax and spend madness. So one of the pledges was we pledged to immediately institute a thorough and concise audit of the city departments, and we pledged not to pass another bond measure, as was stated. What I tried to do was to freeze the the property tax rates at the 2009 level. All right. Let me explain what that means. In a nutshell, the county, how this works is if your house is worth $400,000, let's say for argument, and the market is dropping, such as it has for the last few years since 2008, in order to maintain a stable level of funding, the county does not raise the valuation on your house. In fact, they'll even drop it. You probably noticed on your your property tax statement that it was dropped. But what they do to fool you is they raise the tax rates so that the
mill levy goes up and the value goes down, and you're standing there saying,
mm-hmm. And here's the irony, though, is when the values go up like they had previously, the rates rarely drop. I mean, they may drop them a little bit, perhaps, but not significantly, which is an ever-increasing revenue stream for the county, which, of course, funds the schools. But the cities take a small percentage. They get a small percentage. I don't know if it's 10% or what. It varies. But my objective was to freeze the Highlands portion where we had any control, and we actually did that. So although costs were going up to run things, we froze that. We froze that for the Highland residents, so their tax rate for Highland, at least the amount of money coming in for Highland, did not go up, and that was controversial. So the $92,000 actually takes effect this July 1. We opted out of the program last July, but we were on the hook for an additional year because we had to give them a year.
That notice. Already.
Yeah,
the previous administration had said we're with it.
Yeah, so we haven't actually put that money in our pocket yet, but that'll take effect July 1 of this year. So that money we don't have the money yet, but we'll have that extra. My hope is that as we start the budget process here next week, actually, that we'll be able to cut even further. I actually pushed for cuts in almost nearly all departments of the city government, of all departments across the board and everything, and in the end, I was only successful, could get enough support to cut about 4% from last year's budget, which sounds like some people might say, well, that's pretty good. Well,
yeah, that's what I would say. That's pretty good.
Well, my goal was 10. And so
you got almost halfway there.
So I failed, essentially. I failed at my goal. But the reality was that we had other members on the city council quoted in the local paper here, the Daily Herald, who said that we had cut the heart out of Highland. Excuse me? What a thing to say. We'd cut 4% of fat, if you will, and yet we cut the heart out of Highland. Well, wait, he's gonna be pretty excited when he sees what I try to do this time. I hope that answers your question, sir. We're working in the right direction, I think, but we're not there yet.
I think that it's important to have accountability and to convey that in such a way that it's understandable to the common person out there, and that is in reality the ability to justify that type of thing, and should enhance and promote further conservation, because we have to do that in our own situation. And so by cutting and explaining, I think it will bring justification.
The more explanation, the better, and more people look at it and say, would I force my neighbor to pay $3.46 every time I hit the Health Center Theater for me, and $3.46 for my wife, $3.46 for 4 kids. Is that really really justice? And that's what we're trying to do here, is explain. Have you got another question you want to hit?
No, just keep up the good work and don't endure to the end, I guess is what we're really wanting to say. And thank you for having the courage to have a program like this.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. John Marshall, if I could give you a short quote, said, "The power to tax is the power to destroy." And I think that applies at all levels, you know. And one other thing that you brought up Joseph Smith earlier, but, you know, there's something that we hold near and dear that says, "Wherefore honest men and wise men should be sought for diligently, and good men and wise men you should observe to uphold. Otherwise, whatsoever is less than these cometh of evil." I was at a meeting last night where some information was laid out on what's going on, you know, in our country, and the question that is invariably is asked, what can we do about it? What can we do about it? And that's a frustrating question, because most of us don't know what to do. And I'm nobody special. I'm just an average Joe. I know that. I'm not. You know, I'm a product of the public school system. You know, I was vaccinated as a child. I mean, all of the. I mean, I'm just an average guy. But I felt prompted to do something, and at least try. And I would encourage everyone anyone who's listening today to think about it, to ponder about it, and say, what can I do to change things? What can I do to lift where I stand? What can I do to push back? And because a lot of times, to be honest with you, there aren't good men or wise men or honest men to support. You know, and Hiram Smith said, voting for the lesser of two evils is still voting for evil.
Still going the wrong direction, yeah.
And so if there isn't somebody, you got to be that somebody, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to tell people, Provo City just laid off 26 police officers. What was it been, 4 or 5 months ago? They also voted to be co-lenders. Well, how do you want to say it? Lenders, co-bond owers on a $45 million convention center going down in Provo. And so,
oh, how nice!
Isn't that nice? And they've made a nicer place for the bar. You know, downtown Provo, the bar had to move, so they're moving across the street. They got a little nicer facility being subsidized by the city. But you say, why is it that we're having a convention center we're getting bonded for, if you're a Provo City resident, and you're laying off 26 police officers? You know, that's what you might call an ultimate disconnect. There's a lot of people down there who still haven't got it figured out. You know, they've improved their city council, but they didn't get enough good people. They didn't get enough, and the big fight going on down there is those who want something for everybody and those who want something for the few. We're still just deciding who we're going to steal from,
right, more
than are we going to get correct principles. What else have you got on your running material here that you think helped get you elected and these other two men?
Well, one of the themes was make city government accountable and transparent. Everybody uses that word real loosely, accountability. You know, it's, but as Jefferson said, quote, "Every government degenerates when trusted to the rulers of the people alone." And there were some issues in Highland about lack of transparency, lack of, well, I don't want to get into slinging dirt, but let's put it this way. As Lord Acton said, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The old regime had been in there for a long time. There were things that were done that never came to light publicly, and what we perceived as being the right way. What we've done is you know, for example, the city minutes, the minutes of city meetings was 4 to 5 months behind on the website. People couldn't even find out what had been talked about or discussed, and most people, as you pointed out appropriately earlier, most people don't have the time or the inclination or the ability to go to city council meetings, and I don't blame them. Everybody's busy, you know, working, church things. We're all busy, but a lot of things were going on in the, you know, should we say, not in the broadest daylight that was possible. And along those lines, we've also we spent actually some amount of money. It was more than I wanted to spend, but we thought it was well spent. $15,000 to set up this new state-of-the-art website that has streaming audio, that has video capability.
So the citizens could see what's going on
from home on their computers, on their, and the minutes would be in almost live time. We've got it now to where we're about 2 weeks behind is all.
You're trying to educate people, get them up to speed then.
Let them know what's going on. It's their city, and even if it's inconvenient, we're going to make it as convenient as possible. So that was one of the issues of being more accountable and transparent.
Well, I think that's
open.
great. I mean, go back and read Jefferson. He said the greatest protector of freedom was having jury trials.
Absolutely.
Because it got more and more people involved with these are what the laws are, these are what people are doing, I'm helping enforce the law. But you've got to have knowledge before you can be participating in it. Yeah, I ought to ask you this. I wrote Orem City back, the first part of January, a letter. I didn't make it, what's the term, I don't even know what it stands for, the grammar request, but I wrote Orem City a letter, a couple of pages long, saying, I want to know about this, I want to know about this, I want to know about this, I want to know about that. And they haven't responded. It's been a little over 2 months now. If you want to get information from your city, now our city, they're not anxious to get everything laid out in front of each other either. You are. You want to tell the world what's going on. Because most people, once they see what's going on, they'll end up going right, unless, of course, it's Johnny they want to have subsidized by their neighbor. But what are your rights to find out what's going on in your city? How can they just ignore a citizen who says, I want to know? Well, I tell you what I was writing about, the main thing. This arts tax. They passed the art tax, $1.6 to $1.8 million a year. And they give $300,000 of it to Sierra, give $300,000 of it to the Hale Center Theater, and a couple of little things. The rest of it, they're saving. And if you go back and read stuff that was being talked about years ago, they were saying, we want to build a $13 million art center for Orem City. And so they're sacking away about $1 million a year. And I've made the observation, we've got 60 chapels in Orem. We have plenty of places for people to go and watch their family and their friends, participate on stage with clapping hands and all the rest. We don't need to spend another $13 million of taxpayers' money. And I want to know how much of that money is being saved. People who voted for it, the 5,016, thought that money was going to go to the Orem City or going to the Hale Center Theater because they were pushing it. I mean, I was there when they were advertising at the Hale Center Theater. Sierra, they printed up thousands and thousands of flyers and a couple of thousand signs. They're out pushing this thing because they're going to get the money.
Sure.
Well, and now they're asking for more money, and the Orem City Council, well, they're sacking most of it away. And I want to know how much is in that bag and what they plan on doing with it. I think they ought to give the whole thing to Sierra and the Hale Center Theater because that's where they said they were going to put it. But they won't tell me how much is in that little kitty they're accumulating.
Are you really surprised?
No, I'm not surprised, but I went through, when I ran for office, I tried to get stuff, information. They just drag their feet, and it's kind of like the brotherhoods down there, and heaven help the fool who thinks he's going to find out what's going on inside the gate.
Well, that was one of the other issues regarding transparency and openness. If your government, your local, especially your local government, is unresponsive, if they act like they're hiding something, if there's smoke, they're more than likely could be fire.
Yeah.
I mean, not always is the case, but I think there's an issue. I mean, the employees at Highland City, I've heard so many things that how much friendlier they are in the last year. Surprised. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's because of nothing I've said or done.
You weren't walking the halls before that, so you can't.
I can't
identify
say.
it.
I can't say. But I've had constituents tell me it is such a pleasure to go into Highland City now, whereas before they claimed that they were treated rudely or that they felt like something was. I don't know. I never didn't go in there. I was, like I said, I was.
Leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. Huh?
I was a local political atheist, I guess. I wasn't involved, so I don't have anything to base those statements on. But I've heard them from multiple people, and so I'm thrilled that our city appears, at least on the surface, to be more open and more friendly and more transparent than it was, and that's the way it should be. Mayor Ritchie. He and I don't see eye to eye on everything, which is,
until the Lord gets here, there's going to be a lot of people who say that every day.
Well, sure. But he's a good man, and I think he's a good man, and he has responded individually to all of these emails regarding the American Fork Rec Center and the east-west roads, and he's very good at getting back to people and letting them know, hey, look, this is why we did this. This is, the reasons why and this is where we hope the outcome will be. And so he's done a great job on responding to people's concerns, and I have to give him kudos where they deserved.
Yeah. Well, that's neat. That is, yeah. I remember reading in Journal of Discourses, that Brigham Young was talking about politics and economics. And he asked the question, do you think the Father and the Son are divided on political and economic matters? And, of course, the answer is no. And we mortals are all going to make mistakes.
Sure.
I mean, I love to go back and see where I remember my father telling me when he was in the state legislature for a couple of terms, some things he did that were wrong, wrong votes. And sometimes he knew enough of the brethren clear back then that he went up there and said, hey, I'm going to try and do what I believe is right. And there was a time or two when he got a call that said, we'd like you to vote for this or vote this way on this instead of this. And so, of course, he believes in following the prophet, and so he would do it. But somebody would have a position, and to me it's kind of like the Mormons. We were the 35th state to pass prohibition. And when they put the bar in Hotel Utah, the prophet then was being accused of, being a bad guy because he put a bar in Hotel Utah. And I didn't even know it was there till I went on my mission, came up from Arizona, and they used to feed us in Hotel Utah back in those days. That's for the missionary training center, And
way back.
Yeah, way back. Back just after Noah got off the boat, But I saw that bar then. I thought, what's a bar doing in Hotel Utah? This is owned by the church. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, it was just, 10, 12 years ago. I was reading some old conference reports. And the prophet then said, I tried to get you people here in Salt Lake City to vote this city dry. You wouldn't do it. So most people coming to Hotel Utah, they're going to want to go wet their whistle. It's funny reading some of those old conference reports, But anyway, he said, so we put a bar in here so that these people who come to our city will not have to go visit the seamier side of Salt Lake to get a drink. And so what did the prophet want? Because of the lacking of followers in Salt Lake, this is clear back, what was it, 1918, 1920, something like that, when they built the hotel. They end up having to make a choice between two bad decisions. And so they do the best they can. And I see that. I think Joseph Smith had to deal with stuff like that. The prophets in the Old Testament, like Samuel, when they said we're going to have a king, you don't see him running around saying, sure wish I was running the place. Look what a mess Saul's made of the place. And then look what a mess David's made of the place, You have to deal with what people are willing to let you do. Well, hey, what else have you got there?
Well, it's kind of, I know it's probably to people who are listening, this sounds like, why in the world are they even talking about Highland City politics or even local politics in general when what's going on in Japan with the earthquake and the tsunamis and the, Libya and all of these, the oil prices and food prices. And the only response I would have to that is, yeah, you're probably right. It seems meaningless. But as I can't remember who said the quote, but they said all politics is local politics. And so whether we're talking about major worldwide issues or national issues, it all boils back down to what happens in D.C. eventually happens here. What happens in California eventually happens here. And so we need to be a bulwark against those trends, whatever they may be, whether they be socialist, whether they be immoral, whether they be all within the realm of maintaining people's freedoms. You brought up your father. I love his books. My favorite book of his is The Great and Abominable Church of the Devil. And,
yeah, that was his second one. That's good.
And my favorite quote in it actually is on page 174. The first one from David O. McKay and the second from Joseph Fielding Smith. And these are significant and most of us don't really understand because a lot of times we think that the people that we elect are good people. We think that they have our best intentions at heart. We think that they wear the white hats, whether they be at the local level or the national level. And we could not be more wrong. And if we don't hold our leaders accountable, if we don't keep their feet to the fire, then everything that they said during the campaign, whatever campaign they ran, is complete. It was just rhetoric. They don't keep true to their promise and their oaths of office. I mean, how many? I mean, you could think about it from Harry Reid to Obama to Bennett and Hatch for that matter.
Yeah.
They swear an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. What the heck does that mean? Well, they don't. I can tell you right now, that's the question they ask because they don't know.
Right.
By your fruits ye shall know them. And anyway, let me just, if you don't mind, if I could read these two short quotes.
Yeah, go for it.
1962, David Owen McKay said, quote, "Today freedom, political, economic, and individual freedom lies destroyed or is in the course of being destroyed over great areas of the globe. It has been destroyed and is being destroyed in the name of freedom. A ruthless dialectical battle is being waged against the Christian way of life, against political liberty, against individual freedom, and it is being waged in the name of freedom. Black becomes white, tyranny becomes freedom, then forced labor camps stand for liberty. The slave state is represented as democracy. This is the deadly challenge of communism." Well, he was right on all of these points except one. It wasn't just the communists that are doing it.
Yeah.
It's people in power. It's the globalists who they run both sides of the game. They fund. It's kind of like how Rothschild, Baron de Rothschild funded the English and he funded the French. He didn't care who wins. He's making money on both sides. Yeah. It's a as Max Kaiser, the economist, says, it's a casino gulag, and they just the house wins no matter what.
Yeah.
And everybody listening, I mean, been to Vegas, even if you haven't gambled, you've been there. The second quote is from Joseph Fielding Smith. This is my favorite quote. For all of the people out there who say, "Well, we're in all these righteous wars, we're doing this for God and country. This is great." Quote: "The United States is not the kingdom of God. Neither is England, Germany, or France. Satan has control now. No matter where you look, he is in control, even in our own land." Did you catch that, folks? Even in our own land. He is guiding the governments as far as the Lord will permit him. That is why there's so much strife, turmoil, and confusion all over the earth. One mastermind is governing the nations. All the nations, I might add. It is Satan himself, unquote. And that was in Doctrines of Salvation. So I would urge the people to study the Book of Mormon. Ask why those things are in there that are in there. I did a personal study. You might find this interesting, Hans. I did a personal study, and it took a little while. But near as I could tell, there are 239 chapters in the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
If I had to, I hope you didn't see my notes here. If I had to ask you, guess what percentage reference the word or the topic or the theme of a secret combination, a conspiracy, things of that nature? Guess what percentage?
I don't know. I should know that one. My dad used to talk about it.
Well,
you've got it there. Tell us.
Trivial Pursuit question. I counted 106 chapters out of 239. That represents 44% of the chapters of the Book of Mormon talk about or reference secret combinations, conspiracy, themes of that nature, evilness taking over government, et cetera, et cetera. And if that's not enough, the Doctrine and Covenants also gives us further light on and knowledge on that. And it's not as many there, but it's significant. Out of the 138 sections of the Doctrine and Covenants, 47 talk on that, which represents 34%. Now, I was kind of astounded when I calculated that. I had no idea it was that much. But it was God trying to tell us something? And especially when Moroni says, "Hey, I've looked at your day," in Ether chapter 8, "I've looked at your day. I see what you're going through. And you better get it figured out, because if you don't, if these secret combinations get above you," and let's be honest, they're above us. They're above all of us practically. You're going to be destroyed. And not to leave on a negative note, but it's not looking good right now in Kansas.
Yeah. Yeah, you made me think of my father when he went back to Harvard. He read the Book of Mormon every day his whole life. His mother taught him to read in the Book of Mormon. He didn't go to school till he was 8 years old, and that's when he learned to read. And he said he was back at Harvard one day, and he said he just was thinking, "I wonder what the Lord thinks about laws and government." And he said he'd been reading the Book of Mormon his whole life. So he said, this time as I go through the Book of Mormon, I'm going to look and see what it says about government and laws and what God thinks of it. And he said it was like reading it almost for the first time. He said he had no idea how much the Lord had said about government and about laws. And it was a huge eye-opener to him to say, good heavens. There's another whole story here once you open your eyes and look.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like you're joining, well, you're not joining another church, but you suddenly get your eyes opened of, look what these scriptures say if I'll just open my eyes. I thought it said that. Holy cow. Look what it says.
Exactly.
It's a real deal. Well, we're about out of time here. I want to make a couple more observations. John Taylor, who probably had more to say about the evils of public schools, was made head of the public schools in Utah. Hubie Brown was the first head of Utah's liquor board. ETB, running the Department of Agriculture. Sometimes very good men step into the breach to try to help a terrible situation. And we need more and more good men like Tom here to get involved in saying, what is the proper role of government? Tom, we got 1 minute. Give us a parting shot here. What do you want to tell us? What should we do?
Well, Thomas Jefferson said, quote, "When the people fear the government, you have tyranny. And when the government fears the people, you have liberty." I would urge people to get involved, not just vote. That's the baby step. We've got to get involved. We've got to take action. We need to get down. The legislature ended just a few days ago, or just actually yesterday, I believe. But we've got to be more involved. We've got to participate. We've got to run for office, and we have some good people in there with good, so we have good choices. And I'd like to think that I'm running on principle, and hopefully I'll stick to my principles. And if I don't, Hans, come slap me because I need to be slapped. Thank you.
Well, good for you. Well, hey, this has been a good day. I'm glad Tom came over to help me. My voice is shot. His is a little bit shot. But this has been a good show. I hope to see you next week here, Friday, 10 to 11. Tell your friends. We're going to try and wake the town and tell the people. And thank you, Tom, for helping us do it today.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me.
Thank you.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time